Hi, today we're going to learn how to write an FRQ for the AP Psychology exam. There are a couple of different types of FRQs, but we are going to focus today on the Concept Application FRQ. And I want you to remember three letters, IDA. We just like to think of it as IDA. Here's a sample Concept Application FRQ from about 5 years ago. It reads like this. Annabelle is planning to apply to college, but has not yet decided where she will apply. Describe how the following psychological concepts and terms relate to her choice. And you are given a list of terms. Today we will just be addressing the availability heuristic. Usually there is a second part to the concept application FRQ, and it's just a follow-on to the original part. And this one reads, explain how well the following psychological concepts could relate to how well Annabelle adapts when she begins her college career. And then again, a list of terms. Usually there's a total of 7 to 9 terms. We're going to address just one of those, agoraphobia. So the first thing we need to look at is the prompt itself. What is each part asking? Well, the first part is asking about Annabelle. She clearly doesn't know where she wants to apply to college, and she's going to make some choices. So we are going to apply all those terms to how they relate to her choice of where to apply. And so I'll underline that, and it would do you well also when you write an FRQ to take a look at the prompt and underline what you're being asked to do. Where are you actually being asked to apply? The second piece of the prompt reads that explain how the following psychological concepts could relate to how well Annabelle adapts when she begins her college career. Not how well she adapts when she leaves home, but how well she adapts when she begins her college career. And you'll want to be specific about that when you apply the term agoraphobia. And again, we're going to use a method called IDA, identify, define, and apply. And if you follow the IDA format, you can be very successful in responding to FRQs for the AP Psychology exam. The first step is really, really easy. It's called identify. You are going to identify the term you are going to address by simply underlining it. Now, of course, last year with the AP exam, you were taking the AP exams online, but many students still underlined the term in their Google Doc. If you were writing it by hand, of course, you would underline it. So identifying the term, underlining it, may seem superfluous and unnecessary, but it serves two purposes. The first purpose is it's easy for the person who's reading your essay to know what to score. And the second purpose is a visual reminder for you that you addressed that point. You have 7, 8, or 9 points, and you may skip around, which is perfectly fine to do. But if you skip around, you want to make sure you go back and find which terms you addressed so you can spend the remainder of the time addressing the terms that are left. So an example of how I would write this is the availability heuristic is. That's it, and I underlined it. Remember the prompt, I put the prompt in the yellow box below. And we're ready to move on to step 2. Step 2 is to define the term. And while the College Board will not give you points based upon your definitions alone, you still need to provide them in your essay. And again, providing them, even though you don't get a point for it, serves two purposes. Number 1, it does force you to clarify your understanding of the term on paper. So it makes you think about the term. What is this actually? Okay, and write down the definition. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes within a student's definition, there's a key word that the student uses, and they expand on that definition, and they actually earn the point right within the definition. It happens. So I encourage everyone to define the term. And certainly in this class, you're required to. An example for this is that the availability heuristic is making a decision based upon what first pops into your mind. And that is the definition of a term that we will need to know for this class anyway. So if you make a decision based upon the first thing that comes into your mind, you made that decision using an availability heuristic. A heuristic is simply a shortcut, a mental shortcut. So the availability heuristic is making a decision based on what first pops into your mind. I've underlined the term, which is identify, and now I've defined it. and I'm ready to move on to the third and seriously the most important step, which is to apply. Read through the prompt again. Remember what it's asking you to apply that term to, in this case, relating to Annabelle's choice. Okay. Do not parrot the prompt. Find synonyms or phrases that serve as synonyms to use. So in other words, you would never say that the availability heuristic is used by Annabelle to choose which college to apply to. That's basically parroting the question. The word choice is there. And again, remember, do not rely on your definition to score. If you repeat something you wrote in the definition, that's fine. If you found that your definition was really good and you want to use some of those same words, go ahead and do it. But do not rely on your definition to score. So let's see what the student wrote here. The availability heuristic is making a decision based upon what first pops into your mind. Annabelle decides to apply to the University of Maryland because she lives in Maryland, and it is the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about where to apply to college. Wow, that's pretty much perfect. I wrote it, so it is perfect. But again, I did not use the word choice or choose. I came up with a synonymous phrase. In this case, when thinking about where to apply to college, instead of using the word choice. So that is really important that you go back and you make sure that you do not parrot the prompt. You need to come up with an example of a choice that she's making. In this case, deciding where to apply to college or thinking about where to apply to college. Okay, when you're ready to move on to the next term, and we are going to look at one more term for practice, skip a line. And actually, if you're writing it, handwriting it, skip lots of lines. You may have an idea that you want to go back and add to certain paragraphs. So if you're typing it, just skip a line. And let's move on to the second part of the prompt. Explain how the following psychological concepts could relate to how well Annabelle adapts when she begins her college career. And the term is agoraphobia. Again, we start with identifying it. Agoraphobia is. We underlined it. We're good to go, and we're ready to move on to the second step, which is to define the term. Again, defining the term forces you to clarify your understanding of the term. In this case, agoraphobia is defined as when a person avoids places that they fear they might be trapped and unable to escape. And in this case, the student wrote, it often leads to a person crippled with anxiety anytime they have to leave their home. And by looking at this kind of long definition, you can see that the student responder was basically unpacking their knowledge about agoraphobia and putting it on the paper. And that's only going to help them when they get to the third piece of this, which is to apply it to how well Annabelle adapts when she begins her college career. Now think about it. How well could you adapt to college if you are afraid that you might be trapped and unable to escape, if you have anxiety anytime you leave your home? So let's take a look at what the student wrote here. And again, they did not parrot the response. They're relating it to how well Annabelle adapts, but they don't use the word adapt at all. They kind of give you an example of how not well Annabelle adapted. Agoraphobia is when a person avoids places that they fear they might be trapped and unable to escape. It often leads a person crippled with anxiety anytime they have to leave their home. If Annabelle has agoraphobia, she may not want to leave her dorm, and she will not make any friends and will not do well in her classes since she doesn't go. That's perfect. The person explained that Annabelle did not adapt well when going to college, and they didn't use the word adapt. They gave an example of what it would look like if you did not adapt well as a result of being unable to leave your dorm room. So again, the student used a synonymous phrase to explain how well Annabelle adapts to college by writing, she will not make any friends. And then the student also added a second application of agoraphobia and Annabelle's adaptation to college when they write that Annabelle would not do well in her classes. So this is your instruction on how to write a concept application essay using IDA, identify, define, and apply. And now you're going to be able to write your own essay using two terms that you don't know yet. They are psychology terms, and they are found in the prologue of your book. And if you don't have the book, we are going to give you links to that in the assignment so you know what the definition of those terms are. I will ask that you try to define the terms in your own words. It's a lot better to do that when you are writing an essay. Okay, so I'll see you on the other side of this assignment.